Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. And it's a boot time pet learn how to make dog boots for warmer climate dogs. So if your dog walks in hot pavement or hot rocks, I gotcha. So I've been making these dog boots for years for people that live in cold temperatures and cold climate. And they are very popular. The reason that these boots are popular is because I only sell them if I do a custom fitting to the dog. So I don't sell these online. I just don't. So that's why I'm making these videos showing you how to do it yourself. I have other videos, and some of you may have already seen them, on how to make the dog boots. And they're like, I have my old boots that I used to make with imitation suede, and then I have my newish video using the Tough Tech fabric, and I also added the reinforced toe at the time so the toenails don't poke through. All of these things shall be in the description box below. So that's why I don't sell them online. But I am more than excited to show you how to make them. So also, the links to all these things that I use to make them will be in the description box below. So if you don't know where the description box, it's right below this video. It says description box. So also the approximate sizes. So you could have a 12-pound dog of one breed and the feet are going to be completely different than a 12-pound dog of a different breed. Their anatomy is different. So the approximate sizes are just my starting point. So I always suggest to make the boots a little bit bigger because you can always sew them down smaller. And after I get done with my rambling, I will show you the step-by-step on from the cutting the fabric in the right direction, because that matters, and the step-by-step putting everything together, because that matters. Because if you do one step, then you get the boot put together and you forgot the Velcro, and then it's a nightmare. So if you haven't seen my other videos, or even if you have, I'll probably remember things this time that I didn't in the other videos. But hot pavement, I'm just so excited about these. So so I still use Polar Fleece, and this is the easiest fabric to work with. You don't need to worry about like overheating your dog because they sweat on their paw pads. And so if you add a little bit of fabric, and this is actually breathable, cotton like hoodie fabric is kind of a nightmare to sew with, especially if you're sewing in many layers with other fabrics. This is just the easiest thing that I have found. So, and it stretches in one direction versus the other, and you want it to stretch in one direction so you can stretch it over the dog's foot. So I'm stuck on Polar Fleece, and I ain't gonna change my mind. I'm still using the Tough Tech fabric for the reinforced sole and the reinforced toe. And like I said, all these things will be in the description box. And the one wrap Velcro, which is the best thing in the world. My newest things that I'm using for the warm weather dog boots is Insulbrite. And this is something people use to make like hot pad holders or pot holders that you're picking up hot things out of the oven. And it's like shiny on one side and fuzzy on the other side. That matters when you're putting it together, which side you put where. And then I'm using Zorb. Now Zorb, they make this in different thicknesses. I'm using the really thin stuff because I'm more concerned with using a thicker fabric to protect from the heat rather than absorbing the sweat from the dog's paw pads. So if you're using the thick stuff and you're using the thick Insulbrite, you're gonna have way too much thickness in the boot, and it's gonna be hard to sew together. It's also not gonna be comfortable for the dog. It's gonna be like he's walking on a whoopee cushion. Maybe not as loud. What is wrong with me? Well, anyway, so Zorb is a fabric that is super absorbent, and they use it in cloth diapers and feminine hygiene products that are reusable, washable. So I am super excited about this and cannot wait to show you how I go put these all together. Polar Fleece is the first thing that I cut out. So you'll notice that it doesn't stretch in one direction as it does as much in the other direction. So what you want to do is make sure that when you're cutting it out, It's going to be a rectangle, and you want the length to not stretch as much as the width. So this, when you get this sewn together with the other piece, this is what's going to go around the dog's foot or leg, and you want it to be able to stretch. So that's super important when you're cutting out these boots, because so when cutting the heel and the toe, which is made out of the Tough Tech fabric, cut them the same width as the fleece itself. When you're cutting the heel, cut it either half the length or even a little bit less, because if you cut it more than half the length, it's going to be awkward on the dog, because the back of the paw pad on the back of the foot, this is about where it bends. And so if you cut it higher than that, the dog isn't going to be comfortable in them. And then the toe is about half the length as the sole. For the Insulbrate and the Zorb fabrics, I just take my heel and measure those the same. So, and when you're sewing this together, you're not going to just stack them all together and sew it together, because there's a rhyme or reason to what I do, whether you can believe it or not. Now, how to cut the Velcro, I just take the Velcro and I put the one edge on one side, my thumb on the other side, bend it right there, so I double it up, and then I just cut, and what you end up with is a piece of Velcro that is twice the width of the dog boot. So this will be more than enough to go around the dog's ankle or wrist. So the first thing I do, and I've gotten a lot of slack from this, I have tried the floating foot and the walking foot, and it just doesn't work for me. So this is how I do it. And I make a lot of these, and it works the best. So this, like I said, this is how I do it. I take some non-toxic glue stick and just put it in the center. You don't want to put this around the edge where you're going to be sewing, because it's going to muck up your needle. And then what I do is I line this up and put it on the boot where it's gonna go, and I set that, push it down, set it aside, and then I also do the toe. So you wanna make sure you put this on the back of the Tough Tech. Stick this on the toe, and then set that aside and let it dry for just a bit, and then I'll sew those together with the new pieces of fabric that I'm going to be using. So while that's drying, I'm going to flip over the bottom part of the boot, the sole, the heel part of the Tough Tech, and I'm going to flip that over, and I'm going to assemble the rest of my pieces of fabric so that I can sew them together. Now, the Insulbrate is shiny on one side and fuzzy on the other side. Now, you want the shiny side to be down, because the bottom part of this is what's going to be hitting the pavement, and the shiny side will protect the dog's foot from the heat. So I'm going to place that there, and then I'm going to put the piece of Zorb on top of that. And this Zorb is so thin that it's probably not going to really do a lot, but it just makes me feel a little bit better when dogs are walking, that they have a little bit of something to absorb the sweat coming from their paw pads. So now I will show you how to sew this all together. So I don't pin anything together, and like I said, I don't use the walking foot or the floater foot. This thing, it was just an absolute nightmare. So I just place everything together and just sew away. So I'm gonna, you can tell where the Tough Tech is, because this is the same size, and I like to double stitch the beginning of it. And then you have everything sewn together. So I'll go on to the next step in just a second. and then I sew my toe to the fleece, and this is where the whole walking foot, I don't even want to get into that. This is just how I do it. And I put the rubber on the bottom. That way you don't have to spend a gazillion dollars on a floating foot. But I just feel where it is. And you can mark it with tape or, you know, a chalk pen or whatever. This is just, everybody's got their own opinion. So I do the same. We'll stitch the ends so that they don't come apart. And then you have your toe put together. And so then what I do is I place the toe aside and I put the Velcro onto the part that's got the extra fabric. And here is where I place it. I could go into depth and detail about how I do this and where it goes, but I'm just gonna ramble. So this is where I put it. I put it about halfway and a little ways down from the top. Can you see that? And then what I do when I sew the Velcro on is the wider Velcro. So I make on the smaller dog boots, I get narrow Velcro and I just sew back and forth. But on the wider Velcro, I like to sew in a square. So you'll see this in a second. And I go back and forth when it's the sides, because that's where it's going to get wear and tear. And then back and forth again at the very end of the Velcro. And it just gives it a little bit of extra security. So there you have your Velcro sewn onto the back side of the boot. And then I will be back when I assemble the whole boot together after I do my little trimmings. Trimmings! So when you're putting the boot together to sew the back and the front together, I like to take the Velcro and kind of angle it up and fold it right here so that it's at an angle so you can sew both sides of the boot together. And then I put the faces together and then line them up and sew. So my faces put together. And I know you won't be able to hear me when I'm sewing, but I'm still gonna make the noise anyways and go through the steps. But I double stitch or back and forth stitch the very end of the boot. Line the bottom corners up. And then what I do when I get to about to the point where you can see the stitching is I start going at a curve. So the tip of the boot is rounded. If you have it square, it just gets like too bulky on the end of the dog's foot. So I'm just gonna go for it. So here you can see you've got the absorbent fabric, and underneath that is the heat resistant fabric, and so on and so forth. So I will show you what I do next. Oh, well, what I do next is I actually cut off the corners because it gets really bulky inside the dog's, or with the dog's foot in there. And it just seems to be kind of uncomfortable and they don't fit right. So I just trim so it's not so bulky. And then I turn it inside out. And you can see when I'm turning this inside out, it stretches. That's a good thing. So when you're doing that, you just want to make sure you get all those edges. It really push. So when I'm doing a lot of these, my hands get really sore. But what you end up with is the top of the boot with the reinforced toe for the toenails not to poke through, and the back of the boot. So, in my video of how to go about fitting these and caring for them, how you strap the Velcro when you're storing them is really important. So please go check out that video. And happy sewing! Thanks for watching, Pet.